Red Out Boxing. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that when we did the show on the Zone last year in December, a lot of people were just unaware of Red Out Boxing. People were fumbling the word, the name of the company. I fumbled it quite a few times.
Yes.
Even to you personally, I'm thinking about something like, oh my God, I'm talking to the press. He like this. You know what I mean? Like, tell us Red Out Boxing, where that comes from.
You know what? It's a project that I kind of stumbled into. It's not something that I thought about doing really until it's kind of like a long story. But we have a gym in our office. My business partner, Sam Ibrahim, he loves basketball, and we set up a bunch of basketball courts in Toronto. And one of these courts is associated with our head office, our gym. And we have basketball programs going on in there. And one day, one of the basketball kids walked in, and he brought a friend of his with him. His name was Zolt Durrani Jr. And I think I spoke to you a little bit about him.
Yeah.
And, he's like, hey, bro, I know you like boxing. Have you ever met Zolt Durrani? Do you know who he is? I said, no, I don't really know who Zolt Durrani is. Do you want to talk to him? Sit down and talk to the kid. Right away, I took a liking to him. It was like a 45-minute conversation just about boxing and like how he views the sport and what he thinks and all this type of stuff. And then COVID happens. So the gyms get shut down, the facilities get shut down, and I kind of forget about that, even I had this interaction. So it was many, many months later, 6 or 7 months later, Zolt, he found my number from somewhere. He calls me, he says, hey, can we meet for a coffee? So I go with him. I sit down with him and he says, hey, Gabriel, you know what? I'd like you to be my manager. Like you to be what do you mean? Like boxing manager? He's like, yeah, boxing manager. I'm like, why do you want me to do it? I'm totally not qualified for this. I'm involved in many other businesses. We have a collection of 24 companies. So I'm very busy all the time. It's not something that I thought about doing. But he said, hey, why not? You know what? Just help me out with my career. I'm trying to be a world champion at 147. 147 is like exciting division for me too. Like I love it as a boxing fan. I've been a boxing fan my whole life. And he said, you can help me read some contracts. You can help me, negotiate some things and help me out a little bit financially. And then, hopefully I'll become a world champion one day and we'll be on this journey together. And, I said, I'm going to think about it. I thought about it for a little bit. And I decided I'm going to take a flyer on the kid. I said, okay, you know what? Let's do that. So I called him up. I said, let's do this. And then 2 weeks later, he flies out to Connecticut. And he gets in a fight against a kid called Benjamin Whitaker from Texas. He was doing it at the casino. What's that casino? Mohican Sun out there. And he ended up taking his first loss. He's 2.5 years out of the ring. He takes his first loss and he comes back and it's like, he's, he doesn't know what to say. And like, to me, it's like, okay, we just did this deal 2 weeks ago and you took your first loss and everybody's like, man, what are we going to do now? To me, it's like, I don't think that your career should be over just because you have one loss. Mm-hmm. My career is not over if I have one bad day at the office. So this is part of the thing about boxing that like, I wasn't a big fan of this whole idea, and I didn't want to contribute to that. So I said, don't worry about it, Zolt. The one thing is I recommend you got to change your coach because there was some words in the corner that I didn't really appreciate. I didn't like. I gave him advice, maybe you should drop your coach. And he made the difficult decision to do that. And then not even like a week and a half later, I'm just in my office minding my own business. And they call me to the front, and then it's Lennox Lewis is right there. Okay. So Lennox Lewis came to my office, and he said, hey, are you with Zolt now? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, yo, champ, like, this is crazy. Like, this is nuts, right? So he said, are you with Zolt? Yes. He goes, you guys finally got rid of Chris Johnson? I said, yes. And he said, okay, so tell Zolt to come to my house on Monday, and like, we're going to start, working together, right? Wow. And so I just was like, okay. Like, I guess this is a good thing, It's like one of the best heavyweights of all time, And it's like, let's just ride with it and see what happens. And then my partner, Sam, decided to build another basketball court. And he said, hey, why don't you call Champ out to the grand opening of that basketball court and bring Zolt and bring Coach Steve Hayden too. They all came out. And he said, okay, here's a basketball court, but I want to show you guys something. And he took us to this dilapidated gym, it's all part of one big complex. But the gym was just completely like run down and empty. It's been empty for a long time. And he said, hey, Gabriel, you know what, man? Let's see if we can build like a facility for boxing here.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I mean, let's evaluate it, see how much it costs and see if it makes sense. And at the same time, you know, I realized as a manager, right, my job is to try to find Zold fights, because Champ was like, hey, that's your job, you know. Lennox was like, yo, that's your job. We're just working on training and stuff, right? So I said, okay, let's try to build a facility and let's see if we can put on some shows and get the kids some fights. Yeah. And so we decided to build the first one, Red Owl Boxing Facility in Brampton, which is on the outskirts of Toronto. Small, 850 seats, but you remember in Philadelphia, the famous facility that they had there, the Blue Horizon. Okay. That vibe where it's like small, intimate, and it's like you can hear every punch and stuff like that, and like just for the fans to enjoy and see the up and coming fighters. That's what we wanted to do. We want to build something small and intimate like that. And every step of the way along this boxing journey, it's like, you know, something happened in order for me to continue to do it. So another thing that happened is, you know, we got on DAZN on our second show. And that's through some relationships that we had. Sam's kid played basketball with my friend Norm's kid. And we met him for coffee. And he's like, hey, you're doing boxing. We want to support boxing. We want to support boxing in Canada. Let's get on DAZN. So it's like, you know, every step of the way, it just made sense.
Has been anything that would tell you not to keep going
with. Yeah. And I want to build like a brand, you know. I want to build a brand that you can trust, you know, like when you go to Apple Store, you go to Apple Store anywhere, it's the same vibe, it's the same feeling, everywhere. Right? Yeah. When you go to like a Nike store, it's the same vibe, it's the same feeling. You go to McDonald's, anywhere in the world, it's the same thing. So that's what a brand is. I want a brand that's recognized in boxing. I want a brand that people could trust. And I want a brand that like basically is known for putting on great fights and state-of-the-art facilities. So our thing is to build the infrastructure out so that we have a place where the boxing community can congregate and we can promote cooperation, we can promote working with one another, we can promote the idea that like, hey, everybody has a responsibility to support the grassroots of this sport. Yeah. And that's what we want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
You guys came down to Houston. How long ago did you build this facility right here in Houston?
It was last August. We had our first show there.
Yeah. Oh, you had a show there in August.
We had a show there in August with a regional promoter. Because we rent it out, right?
Without me.
No, so it wasn't our show. It wasn't our show. It wasn't Red Owl show. I'm just saying is that these facilities are designed to be utilized by others as well.
Because I'm coining this. You guys challenge me. Let me know. Holler in the chats. Tell Antt, because I don't read them. You already know that. But I'm challenging that this is the first official boxing facility ever built in America.
Right. I
do believe that that's the case.
I think so, yeah.
The ring does not move.
Right.
And that's something that you guys don't, like, y'all had never thought about that before.
Right.
When you go into any facility for a boxing event.
Put the ring up, you got to take it down, the
whole nine.
You got to get the lights up, you got to do all this type of stuff. It makes it economically very difficult to keep putting on these shows. And for the fans, you're bouncing around from one venue to the next. There's not a consistency from fan experience. So it's like, you know, here's what we're saying. We're saying, let's build a facility that's just designed for this. Yeah. And let's not cheap out. Let's put the best cameras that we could put. Let's put the best lights that we could put. Let's put the best TVs. Let's put the best fan experience, food and beverage fan experience, and like the waitress staff and the ring girls, and have it consistent. And it's a place where, you know, me as a boxing fan, this is where I would want to go to watch a fight, you know? And it's like, you saw how electric it was in Houston that night. And it's like, hey, this is a fun vibe. You know, my dream would be to build more of these in like 5 or 6 different markets. Not only in the United States, but hopefully in Europe as well. And basically have the beginning structure of what looks like a league. You know, like an organizational structure for boxing and grassroots.
Let's go back real quick. You said, or not that you said, but people have asked me, and I was like, I don't know. Where does Red Owl come from?
The name, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I've always been fascinated by the animal, the owl. Right?
Okay.
It's basically like associated with wisdom, you know, in ancient Greek culture and mythology. And also an owl is very efficient at devouring its prey. It keeps its eyes and ears open, keeps its mouth shut. I think those are some of the attributes that you need to have in the ring in order to be successful. And Red, because it's a Canadian brand, it was founded in Canada, and you know, we're just trying to, you know, rep Canada with the Red.
What I know is about talking to you for the last 15 minutes. You giving us everything we complain about in the major departments.
Right.
I'm looking at your schedule for the next fights. I mean, my man, some people got one loss, and they're fighting each other.
Right.
It's not, I'm 17-1, I'm fighting somebody 15-15.
Right. Guess what?
17-1, we're getting action-packed.
We want to reward these kids for taking the risk and fighting in a tough fight.
Yes.
Okay? It's like, if you have one loss, that's fine. You're gonna get an opportunity to be on a redemption fight.
Yeah.
So every show, we're trying to have some kid that turns pro for the first time.
Yeah.
Some kid who's coming off a tough loss. And every show we're going to have 2 guys battle it out to take their career to the next level and fight for a belt. So that's the format that we want to follow. 9 shows in Houston. You know, if we set up another one of these in Los Angeles or New York or Philadelphia or somewhere else, it's like 9-show format in each one. And, you know, if we have 6 markets, that's over 54 shows a year.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we can start to establish the organizational structure of grassroots boxing. That's really what's the most important to me, is that infrastructure, that organization.